boys and girls, it's Mrs. Bartell. So we're moving on to Unit 5, Lesson 2 today, and we're only going to do the first page, which is front and back. But we're only going to do the first page of this lesson for today. All right, so we're solving unknown addend word problems. And just to kind of review from yesterday, when we have a total, or we've called it sum in our class, we were working with math mountains. When you have an addend and you add it with another addend, they equal a total or a sum. Okay, so this kind of format is important because we were working with math mountains yesterday, and that's going to help us with our work today as well. All right, they want you to actually draw the math mountain, and they also want you to write and label an equation with a variable. Okay, so remember, variables can be things like n or x or y. And sometimes in our class, we've actually, like if they were talking about grapes, we would use G for the variable. If they were talking about apples, we would say A for the variable. Okay, so, and then they want us to solve each problem. All right, so here we go. Stacy invited 90 girls and some boys to her party. So we don't know how many boys. I'm thinking that's going to be where our variable is. 160 children were invited in all. So there's our total. So we know that we have 160. This is our total. And we know that she invited 90 girls. What we don't know is the boys. Okay? How many boys were invited? We don't know. So you have to think to yourself, how are you going to figure that out? Now, I know for a fact we could use comparison bars in this story problem too, which is kind of another strategy. So if we took the total, right, it's 160, and then we take the 90 girls, and now we just need to think about how many boys, and I'll put a question mark here. In other words, what number do you add to 90 to get to 160? So I am going to actually draw 160. I'm going to draw my place value model, and I'm going to subtract out 90. Now, boys and girls, we only have 6 tens, so that means we're going to have to unbundle this 100, and we're going to have to make 10 more tens. Okay, now that I have enough tens, I can take 9 of them away. And I'm going to subtract out these 5 and then 4 more. And I can tell right here, that's going to be my answer. Okay, so there's 50, 60, 70. So 70 of them were boys. Now I need to write and label an equation with a variable. So there were 160 altogether, and that is the girls and the boys. Now there's a different way we can write this equation. We could write the equation like this. We could say that 160 minus the 90 girls equals the number of boys. And then over here, we're just going to say that the B, which stands for boys, is 70. Does that make sense? I'm hoping it does. We've done problems like this in class prior. So we used a couple of strategies over here. We definitely did our math mountain. We used the comparison bar, and then we actually did the work by using a place value model drawing to subtract. Of course, boys and girls, you didn't have to do the place value model drawing to subtract. You could have written out 160 and subtracted out the 90 like this to get your total, okay? All right, number 2. There were 150 people at the park. That sounds like a total to me. That's what I'm envisioning already. There were 70 kids playing soccer. The others were playing softball. So we don't know how many were playing softball. How many were playing softball? Yes, that's our variable. We don't know. So we know that there were 150 total at the park. 70 of those kids or people were playing soccer. The others were playing softball, and I'm just going to abbreviate SB for softball. And we don't know how many were playing softball. So once again, I can use my comparison bars if I want. I can say that this is our total. And then if I have 70 here for this, for the soccer, what is here for the softball? Now, you know, in the class, you know how much I love using those place value model drawings. So once again, I would probably be drawing out the place value model drawing. I would take my 150 and I would subtract out 70. And remember, we only have 5 tens and we need to take away 7, so we're going to have to unbundle the 100. And when we do that, that makes 10 more tens, 10 more quick tens. So now I can take away 7 of my quick tens. And there is my missing total. Oops, that kind of covered up a couple of my quick tens. Better be more careful. All right, so I can see that I've got 80. 5 and 8 is 80. So 80 of the kids or people are playing softball. So now if I'm thinking about writing an equation, right? I know that I have 150 altogether. And that number, the total, equals 70 kids playing softball plus a certain number playing, 70 kids playing soccer, sorry guys, and a certain number playing softball. So if I want to rewrite this like a subtraction problem, I would say that the number 150 minus or subtract out the soccer players is going to give me my softball players. Okay? And we know that softball equals 80 because we solved it over here. So there's my answer to that problem. Okay? Alrighty, number 3. Jan planted 80 tulips last week. Today she planted lilies. So she planted tulips and lilies. It doesn't tell us how many lilies, so I'm thinking that's going to be our variable that we don't know. We're going to have to solve for that. Now she has 170 flowers. Let's look at the question. How many lilies? Yes, we have to solve for the lilies. She has a total of 170. That's her total. She planted 80 tulips. I'll put T for tulips. And then she planted some lilies. We don't know how many lilies. Okay? So you could do the comparison bars. I'm going to skip that for right now, and I'm going to do my fallback is, my favorite method is using the place value drawing. So I'm going to draw 170. Now, if I were to subtract 80, I only have 7 tens, so I'm going to have to unbundle. I'm going to have to unbundle my 100 into 10 more quick tens. Now I can subtract my 80, okay? The first thing I think I'll do, and you can subtract 80 any way you want, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to subtract out these 7. And then I'm going to come down here and subtract out an 8. And then I can clearly see that I have a 5 and a 4, which is 9. So this must be 90 lilies. Okay, so now we're going to have to write our equation using a variable. So if I had 170 flowers altogether, and that equals the 80 tulips plus the lilies. And remember, we solved for the lilies. Another way to do this would be to say that you had 170. We can subtract out one of the addends, the 80, and then that will give us our lilies. That's going to equal the lilies, okay, the other addend that was missing. And lilies, we said, is 90, okay? All right, next one. Take from unknown addend. Tim's team had 140 tennis balls. That sounds like a lot. That sounds like it could be a total. I'm not sure. His brother's team borrowed some. Okay, think about this. If you have 3 pencils and your neighbor borrowed some, that means you're not going to have 3 pencils anymore. So that's sounding like it's going to be some type of a subtraction. And it also sounds like that the tennis balls that are going to be borrowed, that's our variable that we're solving for. That's kind of what that's sounding like to me. Now Tim's team has 60 tennis balls. How many did his brother's team borrow? Okay, boys and girls, the total, it was 140. His brother's team came and borrowed some. I'm just going to put T. He borrowed some. We don't know what that is. You can use any variable you want. I'm going to use the letter T. Now, that's what was borrowed. After they borrowed this amount, it left the team with 60. So you need to think to yourself a couple of different things. You could say, what do I add to 60 to get to 140? Or you can think to yourself, 140 take 60 away. So if you know your facts, you could think to yourself, what number plus 6 is 14? And then you would just add a 0 onto the end of that. I already know your brains are kind of going there. So I am going to do my 100, I'm going to do the subtraction, and 40, and I'm going to take 60 away. Right here you can see I only have 4 quick tens. So I don't have enough quick tens to subtract 60, so I'm going to unbundle, and I'm going to make 10 more. Okay, now I can subtract out 60, can't I? I'm going to take away these 4 and then 5 and 6 here. And then that'll leave me my 5 and my 3, which I can clearly see is 8. So that's 80 right there. So this number, our variable, is going to be 80. So if I had to write an equation with a variable, I would say that 140 equals 60 plus T. And maybe I will put this in quotation marks because I don't want it to be confused with the plus sign. Now, if I'm solving for that, I could also have said that 140 minus the 60 that I already know they have equals T, the missing number. And so here we know T equals 60. That equal sign is not very neat. There we go. Okay, I'm thinking maybe T wasn't the best variable because that does look like a plus sign. Maybe a B would have been a better one or we could say TB for tennis balls. There we go. There we go. That way it doesn't look like an addition sign. All right, boys and girls, so that is today's math lesson. And on the back, you are going to be using the information that you did here, and you are going to take this information and plug in some numbers here. So into your math mountains. And we already did the work with the math mountains. We already did that. So you should be able to quickly and easily plug that information in, those variables. You should be able to solve those. Okay, that is question 5. It says, write the unknown numbers in the boxes above, and you had to use the information on the other side of this paper. Then you have to describe how the math tools are the same and how they're different. And boys and girls, those answers can vary, okay? Those can vary. All right, boys and girls, that's it for today's math lesson. I hope you're understanding. I wish we were together, and I surely do miss you. Bye.